Welcome back then folks to Special Projects Pack number 21, and it's already the final day and the final of the 5 builds, another Signature Series build this time. I call it the Belle, and this one is a combination of two things put together. It's kind of inspired, visually speaking, by old military stuff, you know, like those like P-51 Mustangs and old bomber plane kind of designs that people love doing on hot rods and vehicles in general. You can, of course, grab the livery down in the description if you are a fan of it, or you could just slap whatever livery you want on there. In terms of actually driving the car, though, and how it feels, the vibe that I'm going for is, imagine if you took a TVR, like a Chimera, or a Cerberus, or a Tuscan, but especially a V8 era kind of TVR, and then body swap it with a hot rod. So you've got that vintage kind of vibe and the charm and the attitude, but with a still simple but slightly more modern approach to a sports car underneath. So 400 horsepower in an 800 kilo frame, very bare bones, very direct approach, nothing overly complicated about it. And for this one you will need, if you decide to do what I've done at least, the motor swap with the GT350R Mustang. Now, as far as actually doing the build, I've repurposed this from a previous one, so you don't necessarily need to do everything here, so I'll outline the main things that I have done in terms of which you do or don't need to do. So, as far as first of all the sports section, we've got the stage 1 weight. We'll just jump to the ultimate section first. So for this one we've got the rods and pistons, which you will want. I have not fitted the carbon prop, so you don't necessarily need to buy that unless you want to. Coming back to the sports section though, the stage 1 weight, it's got the comfort mediums already. I've upgraded that to sports hards. As far as the club sports section, the bored out engine as well. We've got the stage 2 weight, the power restrictor and the ballast. You of course don't need dirt tyres because we're not taking it on the dirt at the moment. The fully customised ECU, the racing crank is another thing which you will want. You don't need the supercharger. The limited slip diff you will need. Stage 3 weight as well. As far as the semi-racing stuff, you do want the polish ports and the balanced tuning. You don't need the supercharger, the intercooler, the filter, the exhaust, or the manifold unless you want to go for them. I've got the racing pads and the discs, the clutch and flywheel, fully customised suspension and transmission, and likewise you don't need the racing tyres, at least unless you want them. So, as far as the extreme stuff, we've got the steering angle adapter, and that is fitted, as well as the hydraulic handbrake. You don't need the NOS, of course, unless you want it as well, and like I said for the ultimate section, that is there. So, it's pretty simple. You know, the most expensive thing about it is the motor swap, really. And then, as far as the rest, in terms of actual tuning of the car, like I said, I'm going for a simple approach, so it's not like I'm trying to make it a lap record-breaking vehicle. That being said, 400 horses, 800 kilos, and under 600 points on sports tyres, that's not necessarily a bad combination to have, at least on paper. So as far as the suspension, wildly different between the front and the rear. 110 on the rear, so as low as it can go, 200 on the front, so literally the exact opposites. But if we jump back out to the menu, you can see it really doesn't look that way. Basically all I've done is evened out the ride height between the front and the back, because I didn't want it to have that kind of snowplow shape, or that snowplow stance, I should say, that a lot of hot rods have. It's cool, but I wanted to do something a bit different. We've got 7, so pretty hefty on anti-roll, 40 all around for the dampers, 3.10 for the springs, so maxed out on the front and pretty close on the rear, 3 degrees of camber on the back and 1.5 on the front. So pretty much exactly the opposite to a drift setup. As far as the tow, we towed out a little bit on the front with 0.5, none on the back, perhaps surprisingly. As far as the diff, 60, 20 and 30. Give that a try. If you want to mess around, of course you can, but personally I'm happy with where this is sitting currently with those settings. I've gone for the standard transmission. In fact, I should have corrected that because I said that I bought the racing transmission. That was actually a holdover. So you could use it. There's no reason why not. Of course, it will change the points though. I actually do like having the 3-speed. I think it feels more kind of appropriate to that old school personality. So that's a bit of a correction from earlier on. The ballast is 13 kilos just to bring us up to 800. I've put that 10% toward the rear, again for that 50-50 split, but more so on kind of the back end of the 50-50, almost a 49-51 LMP style. The power restrictor is on 87%, with 70% on the ECU. And of course, when you've got the motor swap, you're limiting a lot of what the engine already had anyway. And I guess you could say you don't necessarily need to do the motor swap. But again, I do like having the Shelby engine in there because it gives it a more modern feel and a more modern sound, even more so than it already had with its upgrades. And over here, of course, you can see the stuff which we have fitted and the other stuff which I mentioned you don't actually need to buy. but is, at least in the case of this one, an option to fit or not. All that remains is to jump out to a circuit and show you what the car is like in practice, what it can do in practice, and potentially, as we often do, some notes maybe on how to use the car. Well, the funny thing is, ironically, I actually don't have a huge amount of notes. If there was ever a vehicle where you would think you'd need a really specific way to drive the car, it would be a hot rod or something that's designed to handle like a TVR. You put those two together, I mean, I guess at that point you've basically got a Shelby Cobra. If you put a hot rod and a TVR together, that's pretty much the vibe that a Shelby has. And of course with a Shelby engine, that's kind of appropriate as well. It's exactly what I wanted from the car. It has that TVR meets vintage racer kind of vibe. I did put more of the work on this one into not just making it the more obvious tail slidey, happy-go-lucky car, because that is fun, but it's also kind of like the suspension, a bit obvious if you just go down that same route. I wanted it to be better through corners than you expect it to be. I wanted it to be quicker around the track than you would think a car like this could be. And that's where, of course, the newer side of its personality comes in, combining those best of both worlds kind of vibes. You might be surprised by just how quick it can be around the track, even when it doesn't have a huge amount of power. You could even do a version that doesn't have the motor swap if you wanted to, but obviously the numbers will be different then. So I hope, of course, you enjoyed this week of special projects. I will see you next time with more, of course, more in Forza as well, and there is one remaining Forza Horizon 5 special project coming out later today, and it's very Gran Turismo themed because it's actually a replica of the Mitsubishi Starion rally car from Gran Turismo, but in Forza, and it's pretty shocking how close you can get that car to be. So check out that one. Maybe even if you don't play Forza, it might be interesting to watch, and of course I'll see you next time with more, but for now, thanks for watching.